Let's now look at a program which will have a right aligned right angle triangle. A right aligned right angle triangle for n rows. Now this is how I am supposed to print this particular pattern. Now the very first thing which you are supposed to do on any triangle whenever it is a new thing for you is to first do a complete analysis on this. How do I do a complete analysis? For that, what I'll do is I'll draw a grid around this particular structure. Let me draw first rows for this, and then let me write columns for this. And then associate variables which are going to control rows and columns. So we know that number of rows are controlled by n. N is going to control the number of rows. R is now the variable which is used for controlling the rows. R is the one which is going to control the rows. But here, when R is 1, you are not going to start printing the character. You are supposed to first generate the blank spaces. And then you are supposed to start printing these columns. So question comes, how do I generate these spaces? Are these spaces equal for every row? No, the spaces are unequal at this place. So let's take one more variable and control the spaces at this place. Let's take a variable s to control these spaces, and let's take a variable c to control these characters. So I have one additional variable in this, r, s and c. R for rows, s for spaces and c for columns. Observe this concept carefully. Don't have anything as a break in this particular part. Observe it at one stretch. If you have any work, definitely you can pause this, go out, finish off and then come back. When we come back, you have to do it at one stretch, right? So let's start. Assuming that you are free and have enough time to have a complete watch on this video. Let's start with this. So R is 1. When R is 1, observe how many spaces am I supposed to do this. So I have spaces as 1, 2 and 3. So when R is 1, you have to run someone who is going to generate for how many spaces? 3 spaces. So when R is 1, I am supposed to generate 3 spaces. Let's take a variable s, and this s has to generate 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3. So when s is 1, move by 1 space, move by 1 space. When s is 2, move by 1 more space. When s is 3, move by 1 more space. So for every execution of s, you have to move by 1 space. So let's take this as s value. Once s completes this task, then your c will start. So how many asterisks am I supposed to print on this? So on the first row, I have only 1 asterisk, hence c will start with 1 and ends up at 1 itself. Observe this particular concept carefully. So let me revise it one more time. So set R as 1, I am trying this for 4 rows. Set R as 1, then don't print the characters, instead of that generate spaces. How many spaces? 1, 2, 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3 spaces. After that C is 1, since C is supposed to be only 1. After that I am supposed to get the cursor on next line. So I will say new line. Get the cursor next line. Now start R as 2. So I'll set R as 2 now. So when R is 2, again, how many spaces need to be generated? 1, 2 spaces. So this is 1 space and this is 2 space. So your S has to go from 1 and then 2. After that, C has to take over. So how many values of C? How many characters of C? C has to work for how many times? 2 times. So C has to work for 2 times. So 1, 2. After that, as usual, you are supposed to get the cursor to the new line. So I'll say new line. So R is now set with 3. So when R is 3, so R is 3 now. How many spaces? Count them. Only 1 space. So your S has to go for only once. After that, how many characters have to be printed? So there are total 3 characters. 1, 2, 3. So I'm supposed to do it for 3 times. So I have to print 3 characters, since 1, 2 and 3. So after that, get the cursor on new line, then change the value of R to 4. When R is 4, Do I have any spaces? So this is r equals to 4. Do I have any spaces? Spaces will be 0. How many characters? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have to print 0 spaces, but I have to print how many characters? 4 characters. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again get the cursor next line. When r becomes 5, we will say stop, because I am not supposed to do it for 5 rows. So now let's summarize these values. The summary goes in this fashion. For 4 rows, r will go from 1 to n. Check this. 4, it will end up at 4. If it could have been 10, it could have ended up at 10. If it could have been 100, then this could have ended up at 100. So r will go from 1 to n. What will be the value of s? You have to apply some logical reasoning at this place. If you wish, you can take a pause, think for a while for the question which I am going to ask now. If you forget the first one, the last row, all of these are going to start with 1. Yes, all these are going to start with 1. But ends up at some unknown value. Now see here, when r is 1, it ends up at 3. When r is 2, it ends up at 2. When r is 3, it ends up at 1. When r is 4, it ends up at 0. What will be the final value? If you wish, you can take a pause, think that, come back, restart, and then find the answer. I hope you have paused it. Think for a while. Okay, are you ready to the answer? Yes. What is the answer? Check this. Your n is going to be constant, r is going to be 1, so 4 minus 1 is 3, 4 minus 2 is 2, 4 minus 3 is 1, 4 minus 4 is 0. Can I say that s will start with 1 and ends up at n minus r? Yes, good. So s is going to be 1 to n minus r. So can you think of c? Yes, very easily. C starts with 1 and ends up at what? R. Will not change. S, if you observe this particular C is going to start with 1. If you observe the final value of C is the same as the value of R. So the value of S is the one which is new. So I'll summarize this. R is going to go from 1 to n. S is going to go from 1 to n minus r, and C is going to go from 1 to r. Now before we implement the program, we have to discuss, will this be an application of nested loop? Yes, it is an application of nested loop. Which loop is going to appear inside what? Let's think of the changes. R definitely will have a least change. When you compare S and C, they are almost changing equally. So it means that S and C will be the loop which are going to inside this R loop. So if I ask you to write the loops, R will be the outer loop. R will be the outer loop. Now, what will be the inner loop at this place? Will S and C be again nested loops? No. Because your C will start working only when S completes its task. After generating the entire set of spaces, then only the columns start. In some cases, if your spaces and columns are going to work together, if your characters are going to be printed and then spaces are going to be allocated simultaneously, then probably your C will work as an inner loop for S. Here, your S will be an independent loop and C will be an independent loop. Who is going to work first? That all depends upon what need to be printed first. Am I supposed to generate spaces or am I supposed to generate characters? Yes, I am supposed to generate spaces. Since S loop will be an independent loop, and then C loop will be again an independent loop which will be inside this particular R. So the layout goes as R will be outer loop, S will be an independent loop, and C will be an independent loop. So what we are going to use in this particular S loop? S loop, we are going to have printf a blank space, and C we are going to have printf and asterisk at this place. So this is a complete analysis of the right aligned right angle triangle. This is a right aligned right angle triangle where n is number of rows, R, S, C. R is going to go from 1 to n, S is going to go from 1 to n minus r, C is going to go from 1 to r. So how these loops are going to be? R will be an outer loop, S and C will be the inner loop. S will be a loop which is going to work prior to C, not along with C. Hence S and C will be two independent loops. but they are inside this particular R loop itself. Now let's see a program to implement this particular structure itself. Let us see a program to implement this particular structure. So here the program is going to have some new variables at this place. So let's start with the programming code, entire code hash include the variables which I am going to use in this are integer, n for counting the number of rows, r to control the rows, s to control spaces, c to control columns. N is the total number of rows, R is going to indicate the row value, S is going to indicate the spaces, and C is going to indicate the columns. Traditionally, we will always put a question to ask the user how many rows and read those rows. So once the rows have been read into N, let's start with the first loop. If you wish, I'll recollect one more time the one which I have stated at the beginning. So in the starting of the session, I said that we are going to have N rows where R, S and C are going to work. For my reference, I'll rewrite the entire stuff. What is stated? R is going to start with 1 and end up at N. S is going to start with 1 and end up at N minus R. And C is usually, as usual, 1 to R. And when I stated, your R will be outer loop, S and C will be the inner loop, but they are going to work independently. S is going to work prior to C. So let's start this loop. So R is going to be 1, R less than equals to N, R plus plus. Now within this R loop, I am supposed to use S and C loop. So I'll say for. Now I am supposed to use S loop. So I'll say S equals to 1, S less than equals to N minus R, S plus plus. What action you want to do on screen when S is changing its value? I wish to print a blank space. So here I'll say printf a blank space. If you are writing on a piece of paper, then you can indicate some characters at this place, a dummy character, and say that as a blank space. But when you are trying this, onto your PC, put a double quote, press a space bar once and put one more time double quote. So here I'll have a phi indication, and here phi indicates what? A blank space. In your exams, you can put this particular phi and say that this particular phi indicates a blank space and highlight this at the end of your answer. So I'll have a for S loop which is going to work from 1 to N minus R. Since S loop has got only one instruction, you can avoid using these curly brackets. So S loop has got only one instruction, avoid using these curly brackets. Then I'll have, once S completes its task, C equals to 1, C less than equals to R, C plus plus. When S is doing its task, when C is doing its task, what action you want to do on screen? I want to print an asterisk. So I'll say printf an asterisk. And then, as usual, I'm supposed to get the cursor next line. I'll say printf slash n. And then we can wind up with this particular code by saying get ch. So here, if you observe, your R loop will be the one which will be outer loop. So this is the begin and end of R loop. Your S and C have not used curly brackets. If you wish, you can use these curly brackets. And then you'll have these asterisks at this place. So S loop has got only one instruction, curly brackets have been ignored. C loop has got only one instruction, curly bracket has been ignored. But R loop, curly brackets are must, because this printf slash n along with S and C will be a part of this particular R loop itself. So your S and C will be within R, but they will work one after another. In this program, can you make a wild guess? What if C loop is written first and then S loop? If S goes after C loop, what is the expected output? Just think for a while. First row is 1, then C starts, print asterisk. After that, the spaces are left. Again, R is changed, C starts, then again spaces are left. Don't you feel that is going to be a left aligned right angle triangle? The one which you have discussed in the earlier sessions? It is still the same program. Why S doesn't have any impact? Because after printing asterisks, after printing characters, the entire screen remains blank. If the entire screen remains blank, if on that particular blank screen, if I generate blank spaces, it will not be of any use. So it is as good as writing with a white ink on a white paper where nothing is visible. even though if you write, the spaces are left but they are not visible because already the screen is blank. The first, if S is written first and then C, you'll find that the blank spaces have been left and then the characters have been printed. You'll be able to visualize those blank spaces if you write S prior to C. Make sure that you write this particular code and observe this for some rows. When R is 4, how this has to be written. If I ask you to do an inversion of this, so remember the code, go through this particular code, R, S and C. If I ask you to do this particular inversion, suppose if I have to do this particular inversion in this fashion, 4 rows, then 3 rows, then 2 rows and then 1 rows. It is a right aligned triangle, but this is inverted. If I ask you to do inversion, what will change? You are not supposed to do much changes in this. You are supposed to just identify R, S and C again. So hold this pattern, mirror this. So your R will be going from N to 1. Your S and C will be still same as it is. So you will have for R equals to N, R greater than equals to 1, R minus minus. Within this, for S equals to 1, S less than equals to N minus R, S plus plus, printf, a blank space, for C equals to 1, C less than equals to R, C plus plus, printf, again an asterisk, and then printf slash n. The entire S and C will remain same. The only change will be in this particular R loop. Right? So if I ask you to do inversion, this will be the value. If I ask you to merge, let's merge this particular code. Suppose if I say that I'm supposed to do it for 4 rows or say 3 rows. If I ask you to generate this particular part, so I'm supposed to generate 2 parts, the first part and the second part. The first part will go from 1 to N and the second part will go from N minus 1 to, in this case 1 to 3 and 2 to 1. So I'll write simple skeleton code, not the exact code. So R will be from 1, R less than equals to N, R plus plus. Within that, S and C will be still as it is. So you have to remember what S is. For S equals to 1, S less than equal to N minus R, S plus plus, printf space. For C equals to 1, C less than equals to R, C plus plus, printf asterisk. After that, one more time, R equals to N minus 1, R greater than equals to 1, R minus minus, and again S and C as it is. For S equals to 1, S less than equal to N minus R, S plus plus. For C equals to 1, C less than equal to R, C plus plus, printf asterisk. Right? So whenever there is an inversion, R will go from N to 1. Whenever there is a merging, 2 programs have to be written independently, 1 to N and then N minus 1 to 1. This is about the concepts of right aligned right angle triangle, where we have discussed in one session itself 3 patterns. First a simple pattern, then the inversion and then the merging. Simple 1 to N, inversion N to 1, merging twice you are supposed to write the same code. First 1 to N and second will go from N minus 1 to 1. Thank you.